Hi, this topic is about adding or extending swap space. Now, what exactly swap space is or swap is? So, according to centos.org, swap space in Linux is used when the amount of physical memory RAM is full. If the system needs more memory resources and the RAM is full, inactive pages in memory are moved to the swap space. While swap space can help machines with a small amount of RAM, it should not be considered as a replacement for more RAM. Swap space is located on hard drives, which have a slower access time than physical memory. So this is a very easy and straightforward definition of a swap. In my own words, I would say every machine has a memory, right? It comes with a memory, 1 gig, 10 gig of whichever the number of memory that you have in your laptop. When you run out of memory, then there is a way that you could add a virtual memory to it, which is not like a physical real memory. It's a virtual memory that comes from your hard drive. So in that virtual memory in Microsoft or Windows environment is called virtual memory. In Linux environment it's called swap. So the recommended swap space by the operating system, it's twice the size of RAM. Which means, like, let's say if you have 2 gig of physical memory in your system, then you should have a 2 gig of swap space. So the idea is, or the formula is, if m is less than 2, by the way, m is, let's take an example of m equal amount of RAM in gigabytes, s is the amount of swap space in gigabyte. So if m, which is the RAM, is less than 2 gig, then the size of swap, which is S, is the memory times 2. Else swap will be memory plus 2. So that's a general rule of thumb. The commands that we will be using to extend the swap space are dd to create a file, make swap, swap on, or swap off. So let's do that by logging into our machine in our Linux terminal and see how the swap space works. My terminal opened, the Linux console GUI. Now, before we get into a swap, I want you to run df-h command. And in this command, you will see you'll get the entire disk space partition, right? Your file system has a total size of 10 gig. So 8 gig is assigned to root, 1 gig is assigned to boot, so that is 9. So where did the 1 gig go? So that 1 gig is actually assigned to swap space. So that swap space plus the 1 gig is its own physical memory. So if you add these up, 480, 496, 496, 496, and these 200 and 100, all of these 6 of them, when you're going to add them, it's going to equal to 2 gig. Now, why 2 gig? The reasons why it's 2 gig is because 1 gig is actually the physical memory. We actually allocated that physical memory when we were actually creating the virtual machine. And the 1 gig of swap was automatically created when we built the Linux operating system. So that's why we only have 8 gig here left. So when you run free -m, that's the command to check how much memory we have, you will see the memory. This is the physical memory. We have a 1 gig, which is estimated numbers, uses 256 and free is 81. The swap, which was added during the installation, is 1023, which is also equal to 1 gig. 25 is used, and this is the free space. Now we are assuming here that this swap space right here and this memory, they are reaching almost full. They are getting full. The utilization is almost 100%. Now, how can we extend or add more swap space? Well, one way is that you, again, if you have a physical system, you could add a new memory DIMM to your system. A DIMM is actually a physical slice of memory. So you could add that to increase more memory. If it's a virtual machine, you could actually power down your machine and increase the virtual memory. That's perfect. But what if you do not have those options available? Then what you could do is you could slice some of that disk from your disk drive and use it for swap. So let's say if I wanted to increase the size of this swap, which is 1023, and I wanted to add another 1 gig. So how it's gonna work? First I have to take 1 gig. Let's say I wanted to add 1 more gig to it. So I wanted to take 1 gig from my disk space and dedicate that to swap. So to do that, I have to run a command dd. By the way, to run that command I have to be root, so become root. Okay, now the command is dd space if equal sign dev 0 space of equal sign slash new swap. Now this is the name that I'm picking. You could pick any name, and I'm putting it in under slash. So this is the name of the file. BS means the size, the byte size, 1 meg, and the count equal 1024. Now let me explain you this command, how it works. Most of the time you would have to write this command as is. Why it is written like that? Well, that's how it is. It is what it is. That's what usually people say. So to explain to you, dd is just a command to create a new file. If it stands for read from file instead of standard input, which is dev0, you have to have this by default. Off meaning write to a file instead of standard output. So you're gonna write everything about your virtual pages in this file. BS means read and write byte types at a time. So, and the count is the total size of the file, of course. So when you hit enter, this should create a file with the size 1 gig. See, you have information coming here is records in, records out, and the file size is created 1.1 gig, which is of course approximately 1 gig. So let's go to cd slash and do ls-ltr, and you will see right here this is our new file that is created. Okay, now one thing you should be wondering, hey, why we cannot create that file just with the touch command? Well, that's a very good question. Well, touch command creates an empty file. You don't want to assign an empty file to the swap, right? You want to take away some chunk from your disk and dedicate it to that swap. And how do you do that? You would have to use a dd command. That's why you cannot use touch. Anyway, so now you see this new space file has been created. The second step is to adjust the permissions. You don't want to allow people to read that file. You don't want to allow others and group and others to read that file. The owner, which is root, read and write is okay. So to do that, you have to do change mod with group and other minus r new swap. Now this should take away the read and read for group and from others. Another way you could have done is by change mod 600 and then the name of the file, which would perform the same function. Anyway, so the correct permissions have been assigned. Perfect. Now to make the swap, what do you want it to do with this file now? It's just an empty, it's just a file that is holding a space from the disk, and that space from the disk is 1 gig. So what do you want it to do with that, right? So let's make swap. So the command to do that is mk swap space new swap. Hit enter, and this will tell you setting up swap space version 1, size this and that, label, no label, UUID, and it'll give you some information about the new swap. So now run free -m to see if it's this new swap is added. No, it's not added. Why? Because you have to enable or turn on the swap. So the swap, you are telling this operating system that this is a file and this file will be used for swap, right? You created a file system which is make swap. But now what do you want to do with that? You want to give it a swap. So type the command swap on new swap, hit enter, and this should add the swap space. So now do free -m, and you will see now the file, the size of the swap has increased. Before it was 1023 and now it's 2047. If you want to have the swap space be enabled during boot time, you would have to specify that file in VI in etc fstab file. You'll go into the file and then you come down all the way and put a new line and you put new swap space, the file system type which is swap. That's sorry, where is it gonna mount it to? Swap. We're not mounting it, it's just a swap. What type of file system is that? It is a swap again. Defaults 0 0. Hit escape and save the file. Be very careful with etc fstab. If you make a mistake, you will your system will not boot up. So make sure you typed in correctly, check it a couple of times before you go ahead and reboot your system. Now you could go ahead and reboot your system and you could verify that your swap will be added again at your boot time. So this is how you create a swap space. Try it out with different values, and this will be very helpful in corporate environment when you run out of memory.